Wow, Iceland. Come on. Quite the place, quite the cool thing. Today, ultimate guide to going to Iceland, all seasons, all weather. Let's get into it. So, number one is getting there. There's many ways to get there. You could walk, you could swim. No, I'm just kidding. You could take a plane. I don't think you're going to want to take a boat, but I'm sure there are cruises that go somewhere around that area. But flying is going to be your best option, especially if you're in Europe, because it's going to be super cheap. From America, not so much. But there are some really cool things you can utilize to make the trip even better. So number one is flying with Iceland Air. Since Iceland Air is based in Iceland, they have an option for stopovers, which essentially means you can stop over in Iceland on the way there or way back for as many days. I think it's up to 14 days. So you could book a flight with Iceland Air from the US to, let's say, France, and then stop over in Iceland either on the way there or way back for between 1 and 14 days. And you will have a free stopover in another country without having to pay for an additional flight. Now, sometimes these flights are more expensive because you're going through a specific airline versus some other one, but that's an option. The other option is just flying straight to Iceland. You can fly straight to Iceland, and yeah, you might have a stopover or a layover, but that's how you get to Iceland. You're only going to be able to go to one airport, most likely, Reykjavik. I forget the name, Keflavik Airport. I'm not going to pronounce anything in this video correctly, just so you know. It's not going to be great. That's how you get there. That's not really the important part. The important part is the ultimate Iceland guide, let's call it. The guide to get you through Iceland. Now, when I went in May, which was a really awkward time because both the highlands were closed and it never got completely dark, so I didn't get to see the northern lights. However, I did spend 14 days going around the entire country and made a huge map and basically remembered everything and wrote down everything to help you guys travel Iceland yourselves. We'll start with number one is first getting your car and getting internet service. So you're gonna probably want internet service for your GPS, for Googling things and getting from place to place and making sure you make it there. Number one is your Wi-Fi adapter, and it kind of goes hand in hand with your car rental. I personally went through Lotus Car Rental. I highly recommend them. They're one of the better ones that I found. Price was not terrible, and they also have a package for their insurance called like the premium package or whatever the highest one is, which comes with a Wi-Fi adapter. So this Wi-Fi adapter can be used for multiple people. We had 4 people and we're able to all use it at the same time with no problems. Not to mention it got service like everywhere, literally everywhere, in top of a mountain. I don't know about the highlands, but it got service in a lot of places that your phone might not, which was really surprising. The Wi-Fi adapter, otherwise not in the insurance package, can cost between $5 and $25 per day, or even more if you go through your carrier. It can be up to $100 or more, or you could use like an app like Airalo, which is like $15 for 3 gigs of data for 30 days, but it's really up to you what you want to use. Next thing with the car rental is that with the premium insurance, it covers things like volcanic ash, gravel, and other things that car insurance, like under your personal policy or even your credit card company, may not cover because it's kind of a different thing. Normally you don't need volcanic ash insurance like at home or in general. So this is something that credit card companies may not cover, so getting secondary insurance is a good idea. And it comes with that Wi-Fi, so it's kind of a one and done. As for car rental, there's different types of cars you can rent. They have roads in Iceland called F-roads, which are a little bit different than your normal paved roads. That's not all cars can go on. If you take a car that's not supposed to go on it, your company could get pretty upset and charge you extra money because they aren't very nice roads, but they're not also like 4x4 roads that you would need, a 4x4 car for, a truck or SUV. However, they do have roads up in the highlands that you would probably want a 4x4 car, truck, etc. to get up in there to go on the off-road trails and get from place to place. Now, also keep in mind while you're driving, you need to stay on designated roads. Do not go off the roads onto some random beach or whatever that is not allowed to be driven on. So you need to make sure you're allowed to drive where you're driving, that it's an actual road or a trail that is, you can drive on. If you are going in the summer, a 4x4 car, truck, SUV would be great. If you are not, I would at least get like a Toyota RAV4, something small or that has all-wheel drive or something, because the roads can get really slippery, they can get snowy, wet, etc., that a small car might not do so well in. Especially some of the roads to get to like a parking lot or something may be a little bumpy, and taking a small car is not very fun. So on the topic of cars, picking the right one is important because, again, Icelandic weather can go from, we had a sunny day where it was 60 and then it started raining, and then 30 minutes up even further, it was snowing. And then we took a hike and like 2 feet of snow in the mountains. And this was in May. So the weather can go from great to not great in matters of seconds or minutes by just driving farther. And so having the right type of vehicle with good tires is going to be important. And then 2 other things I mentioned about cars is gas is really expensive. They're an island in the middle of the ocean, essentially, not super close to any other countries. So I'm assuming to get gas there is not very cheap. So they make the gas expensive to get. Also, they have speed cameras in a lot of places, but they warn you about the speed camera before you hit it so you can slow down, but you will get a ticket. It's not like in the US where you have to have a physical person with a radar gun. Be careful and watch out for the signs for the speed traps, but I don't recommend speeding because it's just not worth it. The next topic is, where do you stay? And this really depends on how many people you're gonna go with. If you're going with a group of people, or at least 4 or 2 couples, whatever, 4 people total, getting an Airbnb is not the bad bet, considering not a lot of the camper vans and stuff can fit more than 2 people. So sharing an Airbnb or a hotel is going to be a pretty cheap between 4 people, and that's probably your best bet. Now, if it's just 2 of you, you could easily rent a camper van. They have plenty of these camper vans around. You can rent one and you have a place to make food, you have a place to sleep, eat, etc. And it's a really nice way to kind of get around without having to worry about being in a specific city on a specific day, which is the downside of renting Airbnbs, because you need to be specific places at times. So you could also go that route other than Airbnbs. Just keep in mind, if you are doing a camper van or camping, they have designated camping areas, and you can't just pick a random spot anywhere in Iceland to do it. You need to have some sort of permit or permission or something along those lines in order to camp in a specific spot. You can't just find a camping spot that is allowed to camp and then sit in it. I believe you need some sort of permission, but I did not camp, so I would check into this further because things can change as time goes on. The next thing here is food. Food in Iceland is not amazing. They don't have like anything specific that they're known for. I'm sure they have a few foods, but like you wouldn't go to a restaurant to get X. So you're not gonna go to Iceland for the food, you're gonna go for the nature. And also food is really expensive. It is very expensive. So if you are going to get an Airbnb or a camper van with a kitchen, my recommendation is to buy groceries and cook your own food for the most part, because it's going to cost you probably more than most things to eat out rather than to cook your own food. Groceries weren't terribly expensive. It was mainly the eating out that was quite expensive. But make your own food. That's my recommendation. If you plan on eating breakfast out and not making your own, good luck, because that's not really a thing. There was really no breakfast places or places to eat breakfast other than maybe going to get a Danish or a pastry at a bakery in the morning. That is basically it. And that's kind of a European thing in my opinion, but you don't expect to get breakfast. And then also, if you want to eat dinner out, make sure you do it early, because places in Iceland tend to close really early. We're talking like places were closing between 6 and 8 p.m., most likely the lower portion, and they were closed like well before you'd even want to eat dinner, because you still have the whole rest of the night ahead of you, especially if you're going in the summer where the daylight is there 24/7. So again, cooking your own food and buying groceries is going to be your best bet. And then lastly, as for food, make sure you buy snacks and other little things to bring with you on your mini trips out going to these cool places, because there's not probably going to be that many places to get food or eat out near the attractions that you're going to be going to, with the exception of the few big ones. So just keep that in mind. Next topic is the roads. This is a pretty simple one. I already covered a little bit of it in the beginning, but the roads are pretty well paved. They're a little bit smaller, so if you're scared of driving on small roads, then make someone else drive. Most of the roads are paved and they're really nice to drive on. It's easy. And then some of the side roads to get to the cool attractions are, dirt, not necessarily like a 2-track, but they're, just dirt roads. So just make sure when you visit Iceland, you know the current laws and regulations for driving. It's very similar to other countries as well as the US. There's a lot of traffic circles, but just make sure you know the rules so you don't mess up and make a mistake. Now, the big portion, the things to do in Iceland. What do you do when you go to Iceland? There's so many things. Most of the things you're going to want to do are in nature, to view waterfalls, go for a hike, go to the mountains, go off-roading, do cool stuff. Now, there also are city things to do, and we'll get into some of the few specifics, but for the most part, I'm just going to go over the general things that you can do while you're in Iceland, and then I will put in the description a Google My Maps link with a list of things to do around the ring road, as well as some other miscellaneous things on the list, so that you kind of have a good idea of what you may want to do, what you don't want to do, etc. Because going over everything to do in this video would be a 3-hour video because there's so many things to do. So let's start with the infamous Golden Circle. And it's probably famous, not infamous, but the Golden Circle, it's not as great as, people would say. Obviously everything in Iceland is really cool and I recommend it all. But if you have a short period of time and you don't have the time to spend in the entire country for, maybe a month, the Golden Circle may be something to skip out on. In my opinion, a lot of the things around the ring road were much cooler than what we saw in the Golden Circle. So if you have the time and you have the availability, I would go around the ring road, or at least most of it, instead of the Golden Circle. However, the Golden Circle is a pretty easy couple-hour trip to go around, but there's a lot cooler things to do in my opinion. The next thing is the ring road, and there's so much to do around that. I mean, you've got the typical black beach, you've got the crashed airplane, the cascading mountain river thing. I don't even know what to call it, and I would pronounce what it's called, but I'm not going to be able to, so it's easier just to show you on screen. And there's just plenty of waterfalls and pull-offs and a bunch of other stuff to do. Literally just, use that map I have in the description to see what kind of things you want to go see. And then if you see something cool as you're driving like we did, just stop and go explore. I mean, that's the cool part about Iceland is you can just stop whenever you need to, whenever you see something cool. Also, all around the ring road, like in the wintertime, the colder seasons, you have like ice caves and the Diamond Beach and a bunch of other really cool things that are only available in the cold because obviously ice caves don't grow or don't stay when it's 70 degrees outside. So that's a really cool thing to do. And then also on par of nature, there's the Highlands. That's like the middle of, Iceland where the national park and all the other, areas are to go. These places are not open year round because of weather and road concerns. So you will have to go when it's warmer, most likely in the summer. As well as maybe late fall. Just really depends on when you plan on going. So just make sure you see when it usually closes because it can change every year and keep that in mind. But it's a really cool place to go off-roading, hit some trails, go for some hikes, do some cool scenery, viewings, and a bunch of other stuff like that. So lastly, there's the attractions, the cities, and all this other really cool things that you can do that aren't nature related, but they're still really fun. And there's so many different things to do. I mean, you've got a couple of hot springs, the famous Blue Lagoon. There's also the less famous Sky Lagoon, both really cool lagoons. I would recommend checking them both out. Honestly, I like them both. You've got the city of Reykjavik with the Rainbow Road, the really awesome church, and a couple of other bigger cities around the ring road that we hit that were really fun. However, in my opinion, if you're going to Iceland, you're probably going for the nature, the waterfalls, the mountains. So that's probably where you're going to be checking out. But it's still not bad to check a few things out here and there and have a little relaxing end of trip with the Sky Lagoon or Blue Lagoon. That's always a good option at the very end. Just relax a little bit. All right, let's talk about how long you should visit. Honestly, as long as you can. I would visit for at least a couple of days if you're doing a quick stopover. Maybe just stay for 1-2 days and try to see the northern lights if you're there during the winter, or if you're there during the summer. You can't go super far, so maybe just try the Black Sand Beach or the Sky Lagoon, Blue Lagoon type thing, or the coast over by the Sky Lagoon, Blue Lagoon. A really awesome lighthouse with some cascading like cliff edges that they're really cool. So if you're going to stay for a short period of time, there's only so many things to do. But if you're going to stay, and you can stay as long as possible, let's say a week or two, maybe even longer, that's going to be ideal, because there's just so much to do in Iceland that you're going to have stuff to do continuously. You're never going to run out of stuff. Honestly, there's just so much to do, especially depending on what season you go in. So many options. So honestly, just stay as long as you can. That's my only tip. Let's talk about the weather. So there's a few different times a year that you would want to go to Iceland. In my opinion, spring and fall are kind of the off season, and you're not going to want to go around them unless you're trying to save a little bit of money. But you're going to get better chances to go in the summer or the winter. And I don't know if I'd go like straight midwinter, because that's going to be when there's basically no sunlight at all. I would go early or late winter. That way you still have daylight, but also you can see the northern lights and have some cool night stuff happening. It's also going to be really cold midwinter, and it's still going to be cold late and early winter, but you're going to have better, things to do and not going to be dark all the time. Now, on the other hand, if you go in the summer, it's going to be bright all the time. But the cool benefit about this is that if you visit in the summer, it basically stays sunset for like a majority of like a quarter of a day or a third of a day. So you could literally go do a tourist attraction or cool spots at like 2-3 a.m. when there's nobody else there, because it's middle of the night. Might have other tourists do this too, but it's unlikely to have really anybody. So that's the cool thing. You wouldn't really even have to mess up your sleep schedule. You could still go to bed and wake up at the same time you normally would at home. It would just be Iceland time, because it's light out all the time, so it doesn't matter. Then also the cool part about summer is that the highlands are open, but you see no northern lights. So it's kind of a trade-off if you want to go in the winter or the summer. Now, if you go in the fall or the springtime, the weather is extremely sporadic, going from warm to cold to snow to rain to sleet. And if you go in the fall, it's similar but less, and you get pretty good weather. It's a little bit colder, but things start to close because of the weather start getting bad, roads start getting bad, it starts to snow, etc. So you just have to pick like the perfect in-between time to go and when you want to visit. Just a couple of last things here. Number one is drones. So you're allowed to fly your drone in Iceland. Technically, I believe you need to register yourself as a drone pilot as part of the EU. And that can be done at like EUSA, I think is the website. You just register yourself under the Icelandic authorities, because that's probably the first place you're going to be flying in Europe. And once you register yourself as a drone pilot, you can fly your drone in Iceland. Similar rules as in the US. They do have some restricted spots, so make sure you take a look to see if there's any signs that say no drones, and respect what they say, and don't fly where you shouldn't. Again, I will post a Google My Maps link in the description down below, where you can view all the places that we went to and saw and things that we think you should do. And then also Iceland is one of those places where you kind of just want to go with the flow. If you don't make it to everything, oh well, just do it tomorrow. And if you see something cool on the side of the road, stop to take a look at it. It doesn't hurt. You're in the country. Why not? It takes 10 minutes, maybe longer. So yeah, just do some cool stuff and, just have some fun. So that's really all it is. That's the ultimate Iceland guide. If you want to visit, it's a super short video compared to what it could be, because there's so much more information to share with you guys. So if you have any questions, put them in the comment section down below, and I'll be happy to try to answer them as I can. But hopefully this helped you travel to Iceland. We'll be making more videos about how to travel in general for cheap, for free, for barely any money, as well as some photo and video tips here and there. So stay tuned, hit the subscribe button down below, and I'll see you guys on the next one.